All right. Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, before I get started, I'd like to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashem, Yahweh Shai Bahashem, Racha HaKwadash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing his word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. To you I say shalom. This is the brother Yeshaya coming at you again through the spirit and power of Yahweh Bahashem Yahweh Shai. And the title of this lesson is just going to be very simply put, just food shortages, right? And, this is going to be a kind of a quick lesson. I ain't going to make it too long, but we're going to see what how the spirit dictates. But I have this video I want to play, and it's entitled Farmers Warn of Food Price Spike as War Drives Up Fuel and Fertilizer Costs. Okay, so I'm going to play some of this. It's a 9-minute long video, but I'm not going to play all of it. I'll probably play a couple minutes, maybe 5, maybe 6 minutes, and get some precepts, and Lord willing, this will be edifying. So let me go ahead and play this.
Let's focus now on some of the economic effects of the war with Iran. About a third of the world's fertilizer supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, and its effective closure is causing shortages and price spikes for fertilizer during the crucial spring planting season. That has led to fears of both elevated food prices and lower crop yields across the globe. This morning, Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins told PBS News' Liz Landers that, quote, everything was on the table to fix the problem for American farmers.
Clearly, I think we're at 36 days for the conflict, has elevated the issue of fertilizer and how important it is for American farmers and, frankly, for our food supply. The good news is that about 80% of our farmers actually last fall locked in their fertilizer. So as we're moving into planting season, it's only about 20 to 25% of our farmers that didn't lock that in. We are working directly to ensure that we can get them what they need and it won't bankrupt them.
Now, despite those numbers, farmers we spoke with say they fear these cost increases could put them over the edge. Here's some of what they told us.
My name is Russell Baining. My family and I farm right south of San Antonio. We're buying nitrogen right now, and it's about 40% higher than it was, 2 or 3 months ago, but before the conflict. Let's just say that.
I'm Lance Lillibridge from Benton County, Iowa. We booked most of our fertilizer before the conflict in Iran. However, some of it we did not because it was too expensive. We're probably going to go without that particular nutrient on our crop this year. A lot of other farmers are doing the same thing.
My name is Matt Frostick. I have a crop and livestock operation in Michigan. In January, we were looking at nitrogen for about $350 a ton. Today, that number is bouncing around $600.
Steve Turner. I'm a farmer in northwest Illinois, located about 40 miles northwest of Springfield. We've got a lot of our inputs paid for, but I'm afraid we're going to be looking at some elevated prices for a while.
There's people saying, well, there's 80% of the fertilizer has already been purchased for this year's crop. And we actually heard that figure from USDA. Even if 80% is pre-purchased and the other 20% goes up 50% or more, it can still be a pretty good hit for you.
The reality is we're not breaking even. We didn't break even the last 2 years.
With the increases in input prices, there are no margins. They appear to be zero at this point.
It's just not the fertilizer, it's going to be the fuel into this thing. And I know everybody's experiencing that right now with the elevated fuel prices.
I always say if gas and diesel go up, if oil goes up, everything else is going to follow in some form or fashion.
As fuel becomes expensive and it's hard to produce that crop or costs more to produce and transport that crop, it all kind of equates to higher prices.
So much of growing a crop is out of our control, and we can only manage certain things. When the prices of these inputs become so high, gosh, what do we do? I don't know. And I don't think anybody's got a wonderful answer to it.
Well, when it comes to policy, frustration might be a little bit of a strong word. There's maybe anxiety, even before the conflict. Let's be honest about it. Tariffs have caused the price of our inputs to increase. If you want to look at it from the 30,000 foot view, agriculture pretty much still trust this administration. That's still what I hear.
When you look at the Strait of Hormuz, we've got to have shipments out of there. And I think anything, whether it's our U.S. Navy or whatever it is, to stabilize that region to get shipments out of there, because we were already fighting record inflation and a price squeeze already. And this is just, more on it right there.
For more on the impact of this fertilizer shortage, we turn now to Caitlin Welsh. She's the
All right, so we'll stop right there. You pretty much heard the different testimonies of these people, right? And as I'm looking right now, it says right here on the side, this is just the beginning. Economist warns of escalating.
New inflation numbers are not good.
So it says economist warns of escalating inflation driven by Iran war. So I don't know, not even just, about fertilizer, but even, the fuel, right? The fuel crisis that's going on, globally because of this whole thing, this whole war, right? It's pretty much affecting the U.S. dollar to where, inflation is about to really just start skyrocketing, because it doesn't seem like they're going to get out this war anytime soon, which, this is all prophecy, for this thing to escalate, right? But, even if they do, somehow, end up quelling this thing down, it's all going to rise back up here soon. It's going to rise back up again. Prophecy is going to take control, and prophecy is going to dictate the outcome, But you understand, Esau and these other nations are being set up by the Lord to go down, right? Them and their armies, But primarily America. America is being set up, to have the ultimate takedown, right? To be that lake of fire that the Bible speaks of, right? But anyway, let's go ahead and get some precepts pertaining to that video. Let's get 2nd Ezra 6:22. Because this whole thing, is going to pretty much cause a famine, and shortages and price spikes, right? For different produce, different, a lot of these farmers, like I said, even though they might have pre-ordered, already paid for some of the supplies that they need, pretty much 20% of it, hasn't been bought. And then also, the fuel, going up, all this is going to affect, the transportation and the price of your goods once they reach the shelves, right? So be expected to start seeing, that increase, of the food, right? And as a matter of fact, let's actually start off with, I think it's Revelation 6. Right here, Revelation 6 and verse 6. It says, "And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine." Right? Because not only your dollar value is going down, so your, the purchasing power of just $1 bill is going down, but also the prices of things, because they're being hard to get, hard to attain, they're also going up. So, man, things is going to really start getting out of hand here soon, man, where you're going to have to start cutting out certain other luxuries that you have in order to really make the decision of what you're going to spend your money on, right? Whether it's putting gas in your car so you can go to work, or, rationing out your check to where, you have enough food to eat. Or maybe you'd be like, okay, well, I guess I'm not eating today. I'm going to have to put some gas in my car so I can go to work, or, pay your bill, and even with the housing situation, even that's going up, so, hey, pretty much the American population is pretty much fucked, and there's no end in sight. Things are just going to get worse and worse and worse, as the scriptures talk about in Ezekiel 7, right? Evils and only evils, right? And that starts first with the economy, being tanked, the economy facing this depression so to speak, right? Because I remember I made a video a while ago going into how the Great Depression, the people in the 1920s, I believe the 1920s or 30s or whatever time period that was, how they were doing better than the people now. People now are suffering a worse depression than people back then, right? And then, like I said, just add on top of it food shortage and all these different, different things as far as the fuel crisis and the war going on, housing problems, housing, what they call it? I forgot what they call it. Housing crisis, I guess is what they're calling it. But pretty much all these things added on top of it, is really putting a squeeze on the American population to where, man, soon here enough, man, we're going to start seeing people start crashing out, like big time. Like you already saw, I don't know if brother's seen that video of that one guy pretty much setting his warehouse on fire. The job that he works at, he pretty much set that shit on fire. Working for some toilet paper company or some paper towel company and set that shit on fire, man. Right? So be prepared to see more of that shit, man. People just crashing out, just, disgruntled people, who are just fed up, with how the rich just making themselves richer and how they're oppressing them and they're not making a livable wage. And man, just be prepared to see more of this, right? But let me read this back, Revelation 6:6. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny and 3 measures of barley for a penny. And see thou hurt not the oil and the wine, right? Because a penny back then was a day's wage, which was called a denarion, right? So it's going to get that bad over here to where, like I said, you're going to be working, but man, you're just going to be making enough to feed yourself. You're just going to be making enough to, pay your rent. It's going to be a true, like a slavery type of situation to where you're just going to be just working just to live. Just enough, man. And even then you're going to be, rationing out your food, rationing out pretty much what you spend money on. I mean, it's going to be bad, man. Right? But it says, and see thou heard not the oil and the wine, which is referring to this truth, right? Because, this truth is going to flourish in this time, right? While, because they say, how money's a defense and wisdom is a defense, right? But wisdom, pretty much can deliver you out of pretty much all forms of troubles, right? And that starts off first by fearing Yahweh B'Shem Yahushua, right? Which is the beginning of wisdom, right? So wisdom is going to flourish here in these times. But all these people that put their trust in money, put their trust in the dollar bill, these greenbacks, hey, they're going to be asked out. They ain't going to have no defense, right? That defense is going to be cut short, right? But our defense, which is in this wisdom, is going to, start to, as they call it, ROI, right? Return of investments. We're going to start seeing that return of investments here soon, man. Right? Which is why, we continuously, starting from our apostles on down, continue to exhort brothers to maintain the faith, man. Because this place is on its way out, man. There's nothing left out there in the world for us. For us to turn back into the world, it will be an ultimate L. A complete loss, man. Right? But we're about to win big here soon, man. Like I said, all we gotta do is continue to maintain the faith, man. Right? But anyway, let's see. Let's get. I was holding 2nd Ezra 6 and 22. It says, and suddenly shall the sown places appear unsown. The full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty. Right? So all the sown places, people have the fields where they, a farm, whatever it is, corn, wheat, right? Lentils, right? All these different, produce that you buy at the grocery store. A lot of these places, they ain't gonna have the funds, to be able to, buy the nitrogen, the fertilizer, all these different necessities that's required to grow, because a lot of the soil here, the topsoil is pretty much being eroded, being wasted, because they don't follow the land Sabbath. So they have to import all these different nutrients to be able to yield, or to have a good yield, pretty much, whenever they sow whatever produce they're going to sow, right? But at the end of the day, like I said, a lot of these places, they're not going to be able to even farm, so they're going to have to reduce the size of their yield, reduce the size of the plot of land that they're going to grow, because they ain't going to have enough money to plant, right? It's going to cost them more than it's going to cost them more to buy these products than to sell them. You know what I'm saying? Pretty much once they produce their yield, you heard one of the guys say that they didn't even break even, last year or whatever, right? So some of these farmers, they're losing money, they're going broke, just by trying to do whatever, do this trade that they're doing, right, by farming. But it says the full storehouses shall suddenly be found empty, right? So your stores, right, your Food Lion, your Walmart, your Whole Foods, right, your Lowe's Foods. What's another one? Publix. What's the other one? I forgot the other one. But either ways, all these places, that sell food, we're gonna start seeing, they're gonna start cutting back, on some of the supplies. They're gonna be running short. Right? They ain't gonna have their shelves stocked up with bread, stocked up with meat, stocked up with vegetables, fruit. Right? So people are gonna start fighting over food, man. Here it is, you can't afford it, and then now people are gonna start fighting because of the scarcity of it, So it's gonna get to the point where I believe was it 2nd Ezra 16. I believe it goes into that. Let me see if I can find it. I know this is good too, right here. 2nd Ezra 16, verse 21. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna read this real quick. It says, "Behold, victual shall be so good cheap upon earth, that they shall think themselves to be in good case." Right. So, for even now, people are feeling that they're in good case, especially here in America. This whole war is going on, and all these talks of famine and scarcity and inflation is being talked about, but people are still, in this la spirit, continuing on, happy-go-lucky spirit, right? Thinking that this shit is gonna, get better, and this is just talk. I'm saying? No, this is gonna hit you. This is gonna really hit you here soon, right? You can put your head in the sand, do whatever you want. At the end of the day, this is gonna meet you. But it says, "They shall think themselves to be in good case. And even then shall evils grow upon the earth, sword, famine, and great confusion." You see, perplexity, man. Because people right now, they're sort of confused about what's going on. But soon, man, once they start suffering, they can't pay their bills, they can't put food on the table. Jobs start closing down, right? Because that's coming, right? Big layoffs, Again, the purchasing power, they won't be able to buy what they used to. Pretty much that discomfort starts setting in. People are going to be wondering what the heck is going on. They're not going to know what the hell's going on because they weren't paying attention, right? First and foremost, most importantly, they weren't paying attention to the word. They see the men, the prophets of the Lord, out there prophesying this truth, and they're just passing by, deem them as being crazy. Seed theorists, conspiracy theorists, right? What's another word for them? What do they call us? extremists, right? All these different labels and titles that they like to put on us, to try to demean the message. But ultimately, all they're doing is forsaking their chance of preparing and their chance of receiving salvation. And I'm talking about our people, because this ain't for everybody. This is only for the elect of the nation of Israel, which are you so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, right? But again, our people just continue on, man. Continue on in the merry way. But what's going to happen is they're going to be met with death. They're going to be met with some of these evils here soon, and they're not going to know how to handle it, how to deal with it, right? But this is what's coming. But it says, verse 22, for many of them that dwell upon earth shall perish of famine. You see? Motherfuckers starving to death. It says, and the other that escaped the hunger shall the sword destroy. Right? You motherfuckers going to be drafted into a war. Shit, war is going to come here in America, man. Where you're going to have, troops, whether it's UN troops, whether it's, what's the other one? I forgot the name of it. But pretty much, them rounding you up for into these concentration camps. They might have robots, hunt people down. Man, it's going to get crazy out here. Right? So you're going to escape the hunger. You might survive the famine, but hey, the sword is going to get you. Right? It says verse 23, and the dead shall be cast out as dung, and there shall there shall be no man to comfort them, for the earth shall be wasted and the city shall be cast down. So this is what's coming, man. Pure and utter hell. Right? And destruction. But let's see. I wanted to get the other one. Where's it at? Right, so right here. 2nd Ezra 16 and verse hold on, that ain't it. I think it might have been 15. We'll go to 15. There's a good one right here too. Right here. I can't find the one I was looking for. Oh, okay. Right here I found it. 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 19. It says, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. You see? So people raiding into people's houses, kicking the door down, taking what they got, right? Raping their women, raping their children. Right? There's gonna be some vile shit going on these days, man. I'm telling you. You don't want no part of it. Right? This is why scriptures talk about how, therefore knowing the terror of the Lord, we persuade men. So that's what we are here to do, to persuade our people to turn back to the Lord and not suffer this judgment that the Most High is preparing, man. It's simple, man. This is true love that we're showing our people, but our people deem it as hate, deem it as we're just disgruntled, hateful men out here, just hating on them or whatever. But anyway, 2nd Ezra 15 and verse I'm gonna read this too. Verse 57, it says, thy children shall die of hunger, thou shalt fall through the sword, thy city shall be broken down, and all thine shall perish with the sword in the field. Right, so your children are gonna die. Like I said, there's going to be a lot of war going on. You're going to have civil war. You're going to have race war. You're going to have, man, there's going to be so much shit going on, man. You're going to escape one evil just to face another one. Verse 58, they that be in the mountain shall die of hunger and eat their own flesh. Right, so cannibalism. It says, and drink their own blood for very hunger of bread and thirst of water, man. That's crazy, man. Some crazy times is coming. This is why it behooves you to turn to the Lord, to repent and turn back to Yahweh B'Shem Yahweh Shai. Because that's where you're going to have good success. That's where you're going to have protection. That's where you're going to have comfort. That's where you're going to have all that, man. Food, water, drink. Well, drink and water are the same thing. But you get the point. Let me go up. 2nd Ezra 15 and verse 11. It says, but I will bring them with a mighty hand and a stretched out arm, and smite Egypt with plagues as before, and will destroy all the land thereof. So, and we see in America being hit, right, with all these different plagues, right? The signs are there, man. All the signs that we've been warned about, you know, we're seeing them pop up, man. Everything that has been spoken about the scriptures about the end times, we're seeing it. Right? And now we're seeing the fall of this place. Now we're seeing the fall of Egypt 2.0, Babylon 2.0, right? Let me see. It says, verse 12, Egypt shall mourn, and the foundation of it shall be smitten with the plague and punishment that the Most High shall bring upon it. They that till the ground shall mourn, for their seeds shall fail through the blasting and hell, and with the fearful constellation. Right? So pretty much these farmers, man, they're going to be hit by various things, whether it's financially, you know, maybe a natural disaster going to come wipe them out. You know, you saw that fire that wiped out a lot of the Midwest, right? So, hey, this is going to be a lot of shit, man. It's going to affect you everyday Americans, right? Now, let me see. Oh, yeah, and you heard them farmers, right? The farmers were talking about, you know, all the shit that they're dealing with. So, and that's just these guys who are still in the business. You know, there were some that that went out of business, you know, during the vid, right? You know, them having to sell out their farms and, you know, saying to these big corporations, or what's his name, Gil Bates, right? So the point being is that, you know, that famine is really about to hit. Now let's get Matthew 24 and verse 6. It says, so this is what Yahweh shall mention, you know, to the disciples what to look out for, right? But I'm gonna start at verse 6. It says, and you shall hear wars and rumors of wars, right? Because that's very prevalent right now. You know, all these things are prevalent, right? You know, false Hamashiachs, false messiahs, right? But it says, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. You see? It says, verse 8, and all these are the beginning of sorrows. So this is just a beginning. This is just a build-up, man. So if people are already getting worried now, how much more whenever shit really starts hitting the fan? Right? Again, there's going to be all-out panic, all-out chaos. Right? This is why in Jeremiah 30, let me get that, 30 and 7, it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. So I'm going to read this in the NLT. It says, in all history, there has never been such a time of terror. In all history, there has never been such a time of terror. Man. Like I said, you're going to have polycrisis. Polycrisis meaning multiple crises happening all at the same time. But not even just that, you're also going to have, man, some terrible shit, man. Terrible shit is going to be out here. Right? Apparitions, newly created beasts. Right? Again, killer robots like Terminator. Leviathan's gonna come out. You know, you're gonna have Bigfoot running around, you know, snatching people up. Man, it's gonna be crazy, man. But it says, it will be a time of trouble for my people Israel, because this is what these evil times is attention, really directed towards, to you rebellious 2/3, who don't want to listen and don't want to get right, who rebel against the word of the Lord, right? It says, yet in the end, they will be saved. And who are those that will be saved? Talking about the elect, because the elect are going to be in the midst of all this evil, but the Most High is going to preserve them and deliver them through all that evil, man. Right? And in the end, they're going to be delivered up in them chariots. Right? So this is why we say, I didn't want to make this too long, but again, like I said, the Spirit dictates. I'm going to close it off with this, though. Not Second Esdras, but Luke 13 and verse 5, it says, I tell you, nay, but except ye repent, ye shall all likewise perish. Right? So the important part is to repent, so you won't be taken up in this storm, right? Taken up in this judgment that's being prepared, right? But yeah, man, that's pretty much it, though. I pray this lesson was edifying. I'm gonna go ahead and close it out by giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh B'Hashem, Yahweh Shai B'Hashem, Ruach HaKodash. Double honors to the apostles and the elders of Great Millstone who taught me this truth and rule well. Peace and blessings unto the hopeful elect, pushing His word throughout the four corners of the earth in truth, righteousness, and sincerity. Until the next time, I'm gonna say Shalom and Kwam Yasha Allah.